Hello, I'm Mark Tucker,
Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg, and we are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Hello, Ellen.
Hello, Mark. How's your week been?
Oh, it's good. It's been a good week.
Good, I'm glad to
Mostly.
hear that. I'm mostly glad to hear that then.
How
I've had
about you?
I'm tired. I feel like I've been doing a lot and constantly trying to catch up. So I'm tired, but can't really complain, I guess. Status quo.
All right. All right. It's a week.
It's
Good.
a week. Oh, it's a week. Yeah. Um, but your week. I know you've been busy at work on some open source stuff recently.
I have. There's a number of different things, but there's a couple of them in process. But the one that I want to talk about today is called Player Generator.
Player
And
generator. Okay.
yeah, and it's a Jovo plugin, and it's would be great for voice games. We'll kind of walk through like how you would use it, and that will help you understand what it does. And then I thought it would be kind of interesting to just, since it's such a um, simple plugin, that would take a look at behind the scenes the code. Like, how would you write a Jovo plugin?
That sounds like a plan. So so I guess let's dive in.
Let's get to the code. All right.
So
So I think a good place to start here, Alan, would be to go to the Jovo marketplace, because that is where all of the published plugins for Jovo are, and these are for Jovo version 4. Some of these are plugins that are released as part of the platform. So if you want to look at the source code, you'd actually be going to the Jovo repository, and some of them are ones that the community have contributed. So I have a side project called Jovo Community, and that's where I release a lot of these plugins and things for Jovo. And so the latest one that we're going to talk about today is, if you come down here to the components and handlers, is this player generator.
okay. And we've looked at several of these before, so we've
Yeah,
looked at the Badgerific one. We've looked at some of your community tools plugins.
right.
The next section up in CMS, we've looked at the Sanity integration. So
Yeah,
we're getting familiar with the marketplace here.
yeah. So if we jump into the player generator, this is the page that I created for that, the help page, and then there's a link right here to the source code. So that's where we'll go here in just a minute. But the idea with player generator is that when you have a game, you want to generate player profiles. You want to create some sort of a display name, and that could be like Sly Fox 3221 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ways that you can generate names, and depending on, I guess, how many people are doing this, there are different strategies, but combining two words and a number will hopefully get to a point where things aren't going to be colliding with other people. And it's not really this plugin's job to figure out if this and the whole system that you're using is a unique name or not. It's just a generator of names.
Okay, so
And
that's a
so
good first thing to know.
yeah, so something else is going to need to determine if this is unique in your system, if that's important to you. Maybe it's not important to you in your system, but so that's the first thing. There's also going to generate avatar URLs, and I threw in a hex color as well. So
Okay.
it's just a generator of values. And so this is going to tell you that it supports Jovo version 4, and there isn't anything in here that's specific to one platform. So any of the platforms that Jovo supports, this will work in. And there's also a life cycle. And if you click on this middleware, it will show you kind of the whole life cycle of the different places that you can plug in the pipeline for a plugin. So there's
And
a section. Yeah,
and
go
we've
ahead.
talked about the Jovo lifecycle before. So
Yeah.
so folks who are interested in more details should check some of those out.
Yeah, and you can just jump into this link and it will show you. But I try to be clear on the plugins I write of like where this is getting plugged in, so you know. Because this dialogue section is when you're at the point where you're going to hand it off to the handler, and this is So typically in a handler is where you're going to, plug, have different plugins that are then going to be available while you're in the handlers. And that's kind of what we're looking at in this one. There's a reason why I had it before dialog start, because I have some other plugins that are at dialog start, and I wanted to make sure that this plugin was there before these other plugins were there.
Okay.
Typical node stuff. So this is how you do an npm install for a player generator. And if you're,
this is how you add it to your code.
Yeah, just add it to your code. There's a section in your app where you've got your plugins listed, and you're just going to new up a new player generator. And there are some config arguments in that.
Which is the next section.
If we look at the config arguments, it's in two different sections, the display name and the avatar. So the settings that have to do with display name is there is an array called list1, and you're going to pick some random value from list1, and there's a list2, and so it's going to randomly pick some value from list2. And then if the suffix digits is 0, it's not going to append a number. But you can have a value up to 5, and it will append a number up to 5 digits, a random number up to 5 digits. Sometimes you're in a system where you're using this display name, and there's a limitation on how big the player name can be. Now I try to keep in the list that I have, because there's default lists for list1 and list2, and I try to keep it so that adding list1 and list2 and a 4-digit number with spaces in between is less than 25, because one of the systems that I use has a requirement that the display name is no greater than 25. So what I've done is I've just added this sanity check in here, and we'll talk about what happens if this generated name is greater than 25. And then this fallback is going to come into play if that happens. So those are all the settings for display name. And then for avatar, it's important to note you're handling hosting the avatars someplace. The only requirement is that you tell me how many of them there are, and the URL has to include someplace where I can put this placeholder for index, which is going to be the number that's randomly generated between 0 and 49 in this case. So as long as you follow that, you can have the images wherever. This is just going to generate a random image based on the number of avatars that are there.
Right. And so this is the sort of thing where if you've got something that, can take a very large number and generate a large pattern, you would just set that up as the URL pattern for it with a very large count. But if you've got a fixed number of of images that you have, this would be how you limit that. Okay. Got it.
All right. Makes sense.
Totally.
All right, so let's go into a little bit more detail. And like I said before, this plugin doesn't really necessarily have anything directly to do with voice. You could see this happening in any type of game that you would have.
You can see this happening in a lot of types of systems. Games certainly, but for example, Google uses something similar to this when you've got a bunch of people who join a Google Doc anonymously. So you have anonymous rabbit and anonymous alligator and a bunch of other anonymous creatures joining, and their anonymous avatars. So there are lots of places, both game related and non-game related, where this makes sense. And I can certainly see lots of different voice environments that might need something, some way to refer to somebody else consistently, but anonymously.
Yeah.
So
I see that.
A generated pseudonymous, I've never said this word. A generated pseudonymous name. So
let's take a look at, so this section right here is talking now specifically about this setting. So list, it's required, and you can set it to whatever you want through the configuration here. But there is already a file in there that has over 150 strings that are kind of like adjectives or colors or things like that. Something that would be in front of some sort of a noun, which would be like an animal or an occupation or something like that. So the second list is 250. This talks about the digits and the max length. And there's a little bit that's going on. I have it set up so that it will automatically, if it hits something that's let's say that the default is 25, and it generates something that's longer than the 25, it's going to try 10 different times to find something that's not 25. There's, this is just really quick. It's just randomly picking things. There's no API calls involved in this, so it's just going to try to pick 10. If it doesn't succeed after 10, it's going to take whatever the fallback name is, and depending on if the suffix is set to 0 or a number, it's going to optionally add the suffix digits onto that. And then it's going to check the length again. And if for some reason even that is greater than the length, it's just going to truncate that. So
Okay.
it's not really a great solution.
Well, but it's a solution, given that you need to fall back to something.
Something
It
eventually.
makes a lot of sense. And that I think is generally good guidance in general, is you want to be able to fall back to something that still has a little bit of randomness to it. Something that still falls back to sort of meets your needs in a worst case scenario, but is obviously not an optimal scenario. You said something a moment ago that I think is really important here, and that's that there is no network API call here. This is all done locally, right?
Right. It's just random. So if your voice skill is hosted inside of a Lambda, then it's just inside of your Lambda code, it's executing this, picking something, and then if there's some other system involved that you're going to do like a matching between the user that you have in Alexa, for example, with a user in some other system, like maybe you want some systems to do a leaderboard and you want to use that display name in the leaderboard, then that's a separate thing. But this generator is just generating things locally.
Yep. Okay. So let's look at the avatar configuration.
Yeah. So same basic thing is it's going to, you pick a count and you pick a pattern, and it's going to replace whatever random number it generates based on the count into the place that you have index, and that's the value that you get. And if the default for this is just an empty string, you might have systems where you choose that you don't want to have an avatar, and that's okay too.
Okay. So let's see how this gets used.
Yeah. So inside of Jovo, there's a Jovo object that you have in the handler, and that is accessed via this. So I created a kind of a named value called $player_gen. So if I do this $player_gen dot generate profile, then it's going to generate a profile that includes the display name, the avatar, and the color together. You can also, if you're using this in some other system, you can just say generate display name or generate avatar URL, and these will just return the strings for each of these, or you can use it to generate a whole profile, which just calls these other ones.
Okay.
So that is the usage. Any questions on that before we actually dive into the code?
As you said, it's pretty straightforward.
And so this will be good because it's pretty easy to kind of wrap your head around what's happening. It's complicated enough to be interesting in taking a look at how you would write a Jovo plugin for this. So you can just jump to the code here, which I've already have open here. So if you take a look at it, I'm using TypeScript. There is a main index. There's two classes, player generator. And if you notice in the code over here, when we were doing the install and configuration of it, down here, that's the player generator class. That's kind of the main externally facing plugin itself. So that's that. And there's this other thing called Jovo player generator. And this is kind of the class that represents what is going to be exposed on that $player_gen. So it's kind of like there's two different classes. So there's the class, the plugin itself, and then I've exposed $player_gen is this other object. So we'll see the methods to actually generate the things here. This one's going to be more boilerplate as far as setting up the plugin in a configuration. And if you notice this data folder here, you will see the list of display name 1 and 2. So you'll see adorable, alive, amused, combative, and then
And
the
100
second
other
list.
words.
Yep, and 100 other words. Actor, badger, bat. So that's the, no mystery on where these lists are coming from, and you can replace them with whatever you want in your configuration. So since this is the starting point, all we're doing is we're grabbing the Jovo player generator class, and this is how we exposed it as $player gen. So that makes Jovo be able to add that onto its object so you can access it. And we're just exporting anything from the other class, the player gen class. So that's how this generator gets exposed.
Okay.
So that's the main part. If we look at, this is the plugin part, which is kind of like the scaffolding of a plugin. So a lot of things are going to look the same. A number of different classes that we get from Jovo framework, including plugin and plugin config, are kind of the two big ones to know there. We are going to import the Jovo player generator, and this is us grabbing our two name
And of course,
lists.
our list. Yep.
Yep. I'm defining an interface for our profile. So the profile is going to include a display name, an avatar URL, and a color. And here is our config. So our player generator plugin config extends plugin config. And this just adds, this is the structure of our configuration. So it's got a display name and avatar. It's got list 1, list 2, and everything here is required. So when we define this here, you will notice that down here inside of this plugin class, here is the get default values. So there's a place here that we get to set what the default values are for that plugin.
Okay.
And so here is the class for the player generator, the plugin itself, and it's going to extend the plugin class. And it's going to be a plugin that handles player generator plugin config, which we defined here. And the main class here or method here is mount. So this is what plugs us in, this plugin into the lifecycle, those lifecycle events. So when a plugin gets created, then this mount method gets called. And so this is just a check to make sure that that the parent of this plugin is something that's called handle request, but this plugin is a type that we can use for handlers, is basically what it's saying.
Okay. Now it's interesting because this class doesn't have a constructor method itself, defined itself.
Mm-mm.
So it's just inheriting the default constructor from plugin, which takes configuration. And in this case, it says it takes player generator plugin configuration, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So this is the part where we define where in the middleware this gets plugged in. So what happens is this plugin gets registered, and then the life cycle starts to hit. And when it gets to this particular life cycle, it's going to say, "Oh, are there any plugins that are listening for this life cycle event, this middleware?" And at which point it's going to go ahead and call this function here. So what this does is it says, "Oh, I'm going to create a new player generator, passing it the config that this generator knows about, and I'm going to assign it to Jovo $player gen." So that's how you wire up whatever the methods or properties or anything that are on this class to that $player gen to be used later in your handler code.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the rest of this is just some configuration checking.
So some configuration validation to make sure that suffix digits is less. If it's less than 0 or greater than 5, then you throw a Jovo error with some details. And the same thing if I'm just making sure that the display name max length has to be at least 5. And that's it. That's all the configuration. So this is all. A lot of this is going to be boilerplate. So, depending on if what you need for config, and depending on if you need something else here, some other interfaces, but everything, all of these are exported. So we're exporting this interface, we're exporting this plugin config, and we're exporting this player generator all to the top level. So when you import that in this module in, then you get access to all of those things. So the next part is going to be the actual implementation of things. So in this case, we're going to grab the profile info and the config from player generator, make that available in here. I'm using the only library I'm importing in here is lodash.sample, which is going to randomly select some value that's in an array. And when I new up this class, I'm setting this read-only config property. Basically, this is just a shortcut to creating a private variable called config, and then inside the constructor assigning this.config equals this
what's passed in
config, the config that I pass in. So now this class has access to the config. So here is my generate profile. It's going to return a profile info, and it's going to return display name, and we're going to call this.generate display name, avatar, this.generate avatar URL, color, this.generate hex color. Simple, simple. But the reason why we can use player generate profile is because this is a class that exposes public methods that include that. So the most complicated one is going to be this display name. So I set just some value 10 for max, the name, some count, and some parts. So depending on what things you've got selected, if you're going to do the generated number or not. So here's the parts. I'm going to do this at least once. And if the max length is greater than the configured max length, and I haven't tried 10 times yet, right? Then it's going to do this again. So you're going to get 10 tries before it falls back to this second part here. But all we're doing here is pushing to this array a random sample of something from this array, and it's going to be an empty string if for some reason that there's this array is empty. Same thing with this one, and this generate padded number could return back an empty string too if the length is 0. So then it's just going to join those parts together, and if for some reason something had a space on the end, it's going to trim those off. So that's the first part. It's going to try to 10 times to get something that fits in with your max length. If it doesn't hit that, then it's going to just use the fallback name and the generated number, which once again, this could be an empty string. So it's going to join and trim those. And if for some reason it's still bigger than max length, that I'm just going to slice this off up to max length. And if for some reason it chopped it off with a space on the end, we're going to remove that with trim. And now we have the name. Avatar URL is pretty easy because it's just going to randomly pick something from the count and just do a string replacement with this and the pattern. We've got that. Hex number is kind of interesting. I found some code online that was kind of an interesting way of doing this, but it's just randomly going to pick a number, and that's going to be between 0 and 1, but it's going to come out as 0. Blah 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 blah. So we're going to convert that to a string base 16, and since it still has a zero dot on it, we're
trims off the front. That's an interesting solution, part, yeah.
And then throw on a hashtag on the beginning. So I'm like, that's kind of an interesting one-line solution to this. Sounds good to me. Here's just a random int function. You pass in some sort of a number, and it does the random stuff on it. And then this is the padding. So if padding digits is equal, it's just going to return an empty string. Otherwise, it's going to, figure out the max value. In this case, like if it's 4 digits, it's going to be 10,000 minus 1, which is 9999. Randomly picked from there, and it's going to then pad anything else up to the number of digits. if it's less than like 5 digits, and then you pad that, and that's it. That's the code. So that
So
is the basic structure of a Jovo plugin.
So yeah, as you said, it's not terribly difficult code, but I think it's interesting to see exactly how how you make those hooks into Jovo and where different things get exposed and how they get exposed. So that was very interesting to see.
Yeah, and it's a pretty common pattern to have two different classes. One that's kind of represents the plugin and its configuration and kind of the boilerplate of a plugin, and the one that is the thing that's exposed. Now, you don't always expose something on this object, like this dot player gen, $ player gen. You don't necessarily always do that. But if you do, then you'll definitely need that second class. In other cases, you could just with some of the plugins that I've written for like NLUs or things like that, then you don't really need that second class, because you're going to say at this point in time in the life cycle that I'm going to run this code, and there's usually a base class that's like the base NLU class, and so by the time you get it, there is some sort of get text function or something like that that will do something, or get intents. I don't know exactly. You'd have to look at that closely, but there's some basic structure. So you wouldn't necessarily need that second class, because it's all just like, I'm listening for this thing to happen in the lifecycle event, and I'm doing something, and then I'm putting something on the Jovo object so that later somebody can pull that off the Jovo object. And in some cases, like in the case of NLUs and stuff, there's already a well-known defined $
Location, yeah.
object or location to put those values.
It's okay. So clever plugin, certainly useful in a wide range of applications. And I think it was very informative to see just how you start making those hooks in Jovo. So
yeah, and this is actually a lot of this code came from when I did Snatchword. So because Snatchword has the ability to create players and has a leaderboard, and what I had before for that is I kind of merged a couple of things into one plugin, and I decided as I was re-implementing this that it might be useful to tease out this generator part from the part that's actually going to be the next plugin, which I'm in the process of writing, which is going to be a connection to PlayFab. So PlayFab is a system that allows you to create players and leaderboards and lots and lots of other things. There's a whole bunch that it handles, and so I've got a place inside of the PlayFab plugin where it says, oh, I want to log in and create an account, so I need a profile. So I have like an on profile callback that when that happens, I actually just then call this player generator to generate the profile, and then it returns and sends that off to PlayFab. So now PlayFab actually has that profile information stored there.
I think one of the interesting things about this is probably I can see a lot of people saying, well, why do I need to generate a name when, I can get the name via account linking, for example. And I think one of the notable features of this is this means you don't need account linking, or it lets you offer account linking as an additional feature.
Right.
But, certainly it means that someone can just onboard and start using it immediately, and you have a name to refer to them to. And then later you can say, look, if you don't want me to refer to you as, Green Gopher 2121, attach your account. Otherwise, you're Green Gopher 2121.
Yep. And you can even do some clever things like, if you'd like to customize your name, pay for this in-app purchase, and here's the instructions on how to do that, or whatnot. So it is a use case that you'll see quite a bit, but you'll even see this kind of same pattern in mobile apps where you download a game and they want you to be able to jump right in and immediately play the game. Because you're interested, you found this, you're like, hey, this is interesting, let's play it. you already spent some time downloading it and you just want to get right into it, as opposed to, okay, now you need to log in and give me this personal
Right.
information.
You know,
And you're like, I don't, whoa, I don't even know if I like this thing or not.
right, the less friction that we give people when they're just starting out, the better chances are that they're going to keep going. You know,
Yeah.
if you give them a lot of friction, they're going to bail.
Yeah,
So
and I've seen this with Snatchword with people where you know, somebody's been playing Snatchword for a while, and I gave them the option. I'm like, hey, you know, you've been playing this a long time. Would you like to customize your name? Would you like to be something? He was like, no, I'm really attached to such and such, you know, some number, and they like that. And so
yeah,
even, you know, even if given the option, sometimes just this generated player name is something that somebody might want to keep a hold of.
so this was informative. Thank you for both sharing the code and for sharing discussion about how it was built and how it works.
Thank you.
You know, as always, and this is on GitHub, so if people find issues or have things they want to add in, they can always open up an issue.
Yep.
And as always, you can find us on social media or leave comments below. I'd love to hear what people think, and love to hear also, you know, this is a good, what, third or fourth plugin that you've kind of pointed out to us on the show, Mark. So
Right.
I'm really kind of curious, what other plugins do people see as valuable? And, well, you know, has
Yeah.
this inspired people to work on open source and plugins for Jovo or for other voice elements? So I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. And kind of my bigger picture is these are things that I've done in games or skills over time, you know, through my experience, and I've always wanted to eventually get them to a point where they could be open sourced. So the end goal here is I want to be able to have a starter game project for Jovo where within 10 minutes you can download the project, go to PlayFab, configure a few things, and immediately start running, and you'll have a game that has player profiles, leaderboards, badges, and, you know, some basic structure of how a game works, and you could just get off and going and create. I'm just trying to remove as many roadblocks as possible so
Yep.
people can create more games.
Okay, fantastic. So love to hear people's thoughts, love to hear what people are doing with all of these. And, you know, we will discuss it another time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Thanks, Alan. Take care.
Thanks, Mark. Have a great week.